about who fixed who, when they were fixed, and in what parties they belong to. To help us put that in perspective, we have ex-PNU officials. George Nyamweya, who is a former PNU campaign manager, is in studio. George Nyamweya, sorry, is in studio with us, and also Nderitu Mureithi, who was a former PNU treasurer. And they're going to be talking to Mutegi Njau over the same. And we want to invite your questions, comments, and views. The number to use is 22422. That number again, 22422. That's our SMS number. Talk to us, and Mutegi Njau will be able to field your questions, views, and comments to our guests this morning. And also on Twitter, the hashtag to use is Power Breakfast. Mutegi.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Maybe I start with you, Nderitu Mureithi. What do you make of this? A lot of people are puzzled that these things are happening. We thought that after Friday's warning by the ICC, the prayers may be cooled down, but it looks like it's not going to happen.
Well, I think, first of all, great to be here. I think that political leaders in this country, and really, you've seen many of us come and go as politicians. So this is not the first crop of political leaders. They come and go. And you know, you have, I would say, 4 types of politician or political individuals. They are activists, you know, people who use whatever circumstance to try and get noticed. They are leaders who want to be seen to be defending the president, for example. And if you go back to President Moi, President Kibaki, and now President Uhuru, and so on, you will find, and we typically will call that person a sycophant. And they want to be seen to be the one really defending the person. And of course, you also have career oppositionists, people who watapinga to every time that there is any issue, watapinga. And I think there is always the voice of reason. What one hopes is that the voices of reason will prevail, so that we do not take this country to the same challenges that we have come from. Because remember, how did we get to the ICC in the first place? What is it that had happened? What is the actual historical account of what happened that we ended up with 6 Kenyans appearing before the ICC? So it is unfortunate in the sense that the political leaders are using or are getting the whole country worked up in a particular manner, other than actually providing actual solutions to the challenges that we find ourselves.
And Mr. Nyamweya, you're a lawyer, I think?
Yes, I am indeed.
You're a lawyer, and what is puzzling is that not some of these people speaking there, they're not, they're very qualified lawyers, professors of law. And there is something called sub judice.
That's correct.
And I suppose also it applies when it comes to pending matters, even with the ICC.
Yes.
They have been asked not to insult, not to attack the court. They have not been asked not to pray, because nobody tells people not to pray in church. But they have gone ahead and did exactly what they were not told to do.
Yes.
What do you make of this?
And that's the tragedy of it. That is a sure way of driving a country into chaos. When we cease to respect the rule of law and respect institutions. You know, we've clamored over 40 or so years to get a new constitution, which hopefully was going to help us start behaving in a manner that respects the rule of law. I may not like whoever is the occupant at this particular point in time, but I must respect that institution. Now, and lately we've seen very many political leaders going to court to enforce their rights, including the current head of state was taken to court over a petition, and is president courtesy of the Supreme Court. Therefore, we should respect those courts. The ICC is part of the Kenyan legal system. We ourselves as Kenya entered, we signed up for the Rome Statute. So we should respect the institution. We may not like those judges, but the way you see political leaders now describing them, when you start asking who's so and so, And yet you yourself, if you're in trouble, you would want to go to that court. Would you be saying, who is so-and-so? When you start saying, for example, who is the Chief Justice, and you expect still to go back to the Chief Justice, then we start asking ourselves, who is that person in Parliament, or who is the leader of this? What situation shall we get? But more importantly, you know, as my colleague has said, we got into this with our eyes open. Many of us were saying, let us find a local solution. And you know, it's not even too late even now. I believe that if the president was minded to and called for a national conference, we can really look at even the constitution. Remember, we said 20% was worrisome, 80% was okay. We could still as a country sit and say, we got it wrong, we went to the ICC wrongly, we ourselves are going to find a mechanism of reconciling and healing our country. Then if we all went to the various institutions internationally, we would say, no, Kenya, you can't go and sit down and resolve your issues. We've still got IDPs, both in camps and integrated. We're not talking about those ones. We have teachers out here with the economies. If you go to the local counties, you know, the economies have slowed down. There's nothing going on. But we are spending a lot of energy, negative energy actually, trying to do something that we will not do as much as we pray. The prayers are not, they will not solve our issue there. The issue there, then I think the lawyers who are there are fairly competent and will be able to manage that affair. But for us, we must come back to our senses. We must try and heal this country. The issues we have are more than enough to have a large number of members of parliament spending their time and energies on a matter that they cannot solve in that way. And I would just appeal to everybody really, not just to those members of parliament, to everybody. Let's have respect for the rule of law. Let us respect institutions. Let us respect ourselves, even in our own discourse. Surely we should be able to be civil. I can disagree with you, but I don't have to do it in a disagreeable manner.
One of the things that have been there in these meetings is that we now know, according to one Moses Kuria, member of Watondo, we now know who fixed. And he says he did recruit and whatever, he bought witnesses. And he was doing that on behalf of PNU. And he said he did it with Mother Karua. Mother Karua has gone to court to stop that. You were in PNU that time. You, Mr. Nyamweya, yes. You used to be a campaign manager?
Yes, I was the campaign manager.
And Mr. Mureithi used to be a treasurer.
Yeah.
What is the matter? Did you employ...
Well, perhaps let me answer that as the campaign manager.
Yes.
Firstly, you know, elections, the campaigns were held in a very peaceful way, in a peaceful manner. And when we went to KICC for the presidential tallying, you know, both PNU, in fact, Martha Karua has actually never been a member of PNU. She's actually of NAC Kenya. But you know, PNU is was a coalition of parties. And those ones who were in that coalition nominated her to represent their interest in the campaign, the presidential tally. I represented PNU itself as a campaign manager. And ODM had James Orengo, senator now, and Karoli Omondi. And ODM Kenya had the late Senator Mtula Kilonzo. So it's never been quite accurate or fair to say that there was no tallying that took place. We spent the whole night and went through all the 210 constituencies, and we were satisfied that's the best we could do. Now again, as I say, we don't want to respect institutions. The Electoral Commission announced a winner. You may not like what they did, you may even dispute it, but you accepted that that is the institution that does this. Now, at no time, to the best of my knowledge and even the records, that did we employ or have a gentleman you say was doing so. If he was doing so, he was doing it on his own whim, and he's confessed he was doing it himself. But it was never on behalf of PNU. And we had two commissions, if you recall. There was the Curricular Commission and there was the Waki Commission. PNU, like the other parties, was asked to give a report, and that's what it did. It was not asked or requested to go procuring or sourcing for witnesses. If anybody felt particularly keen for doing it, that's perhaps they should be able to carry their own cross, if I can put it that way. They shouldn't hide behind a political party. And in fact, even the Constitution, and even before the new Constitution, we still were required to behave in a certain way. And it's not the business of a political party which formed government to go around getting people to... And in any case, how would anybody even have foreseen that we were going to go to ICC so that we would be planning that in 2010 or something like this, we are going to take somebody there and fix that person? That's really giving a lot of foresight.
I think we should lay out the historical. I mean, what actually happened? What was the chronology of events, as it were, so that you could see how a lot of the lies and half-truths and other have been peddled. Look, we go to election in 2007. 2 to 3 days before the actual voting, there is violence in certain parts of this country. Ultimately, there is a tallying process and the violence is escalated very much in many parts of this country. And don't forget, over 1,300 people lost their lives in that violence. Now, we as a country went through a process, a mediated process. A government, a grand coalition government is formed. The Serena process resulted in several propositions that were then legislated. And as my colleague has said, one, the Craigla Commission to look into the circumstances of the tallying and so on. The Waki Commission to look at issues of violence, and even Truth, Justice and Reconciliation to look at ways in which the country could heal. Now, the gentleman you quote says that, oh, he procured witnesses for Craigla. Craigla was not even looking at the issues of violence. In the ICC cases,
have to look at who won.
It was trying to look at who won. Yeah. Now, so the first big lie is that Craigla equals Waki equals ICC. There is nothing like that. Number two, remember, after the Waki Commission released its report, the number one preferred solution was to find a local specific judicial mechanism to deal with that violence. And we were both members of the 10th Parliament, and the issue of the local tribunal legislation was brought to the table, and very many political leaders argued, as you all will recall, don't be vague, go to the Hague. Go to the Hague. And therefore, for somebody to purport that sometime before they had this wonderful foresight that this is the way things were going to go, and that they had then gone out and procured witnesses, oh please. And to say that you are look, Mutegi, I mean, we are guests here, we've come and we have appeared on Citizen TV before. Now, if we go out there in Kenya and we start talking about Citizen TV as though Citizen, I mean, we have come here as guests to speak. That level of delusion, really does cast doubt. So I myself think, Mutegi, where we are as a country is, first of all, to take stock and say, look, should we really have gone to Hague? I think both, I certainly am on record and others, that we had preferred a local mechanism. Let us be able to build the credibility of our institutions ourselves. Because going to the external court was an admission that we have failed to solve our own problems.
But at that time, you remember, we didn't have any trust in the judiciary.
Well, exactly.
And that's the reason why people say you can't trust the court. In any case, the same court and adjudicated and saying the president had won. So some people didn't trust it, that same court.
Well, and in there is the tragedy of Kenya then and now.
Yeah.
If we get into this habit of demonizing institutions and eroding their credibility, so much so that sisi wenyewe, we are no longer able or willing to accept those institutions. Look, you know, political leaders get into this habit, for example, of blaming, say, the police, castigating police. And I find that all the time. You know, and it is these same officers or these same institutions which you yourself will end up running to. So I think that the responsibility of political leadership is in fact to bring sanity, bring confidence to the very institutions that we are seeking power to lead.
Some people feel that you used to PNU.
Yes.
And the ODM, the president, Kibaki, and the later prime minister. They were the two fighting. The people feel that Kibaki and Raila are the one who is supposed to be to the aim. They're not Uhuru, not Ruto.
But firstly, I think we should not use the word fighting. They were not fighting.
Okay.
They
were political.
They were seeking. One was seeking to be re-elected.
Yes.
The other one was seeking to be elected.
Yes.
And that is fair enough. That's why we have set up these institutions for people to have a choice. And indeed, even now, one of the dismaying things we see is again this clamor to try and go back to one party again. The whole thing was multi-partyism, so you have choice. So give people a choice. And you remember we had this one, we were saying kazi endele, and the other was saying kazi anze. And I thought it was a very healthy campaign, and it should be. And even now, that is really how we should focus ourselves, give ourselves choices. Now, I don't know that we can say a candidate, yes, this candidate was planning, I shall, at any cost, I can speak authoritatively because I know Mwai Kibaki, before and during, was saying, look, if the Kenyans be elected, we will complete the job. If they don't, we will accept their verdict. So is that the sort of person who would have been planning then to go and fix people or cling on to power? And I have not heard that the Prime Minister at any time was also saying that, other than some supporters who were saying haki yetu and so on. Yes. So actually I don't even think the correct issue should be saying who is to blame. We got into a mess. When we are in a mess, the question we should be asking ourselves is, how do we get ourselves out of this mess? And the way of getting out of this mess is not by what we're doing now, not by this sort of inflaming emotions. It is actually to sit down and say, how do we get ourselves out of the quagmire that Kenya finds itself in? That's really what all of us as leaders should be addressing. Not really at who fixed who and so on and so forth. It's not our business in this life to go around fixing each other. It's how do we live harmoniously? How do you do your job without your colleagues here thinking that you are fixing them or they're fixing you? It doesn't work. A country doesn't work that way. And this clamor that now we must find fixers, you know, it's become a mission, an obsession, that we must find somebody who we must fix. For example, you say, oh, we want to get NIS, we want to get officials in government who did fixing. People run government. You need officials to run government. And if they are doing their job, whether you like it or don't like it, you don't start saying now, let us fix the officials.
For doing their job. For doing their job. Because you yourself, who will you want then to run the government for you or to assist you in the administration?
Yes.
But you know, I have represented a constituency from the Rift Valley in the 10th Parliament.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that the view that we took about how do you heal a country? How do you get communities who have had a very serious confrontation? How do you move the country forward from that confrontation? And you cannot move it forward by first saying, let us now fix this one, or let us now fix the other one. The way to do it, in my view, is the way that, which ultimately, in fact, resulted in the TNA-URP alliance, which was that, look, we need to find a way to get away from the past and seek peace instead of seek revenge, if I can use those words. And therefore, where we are, what is it that we should be doing? I mean, the idea, the question of proving innocence, which presumably is what the prayer rallies are about, I mean, that would be best handled in a professional manner. That what is it that the defense teams can be aided with to prove innocence? And I think that that is fair, it is correct, it is legitimate, and it should be done. But the way to do it certainly is not to go inflaming, is not trying to open old wounds. I have seen people saying, oh, let us look at the Waki report, that's the answer. Look, I mean, there cannot be a bigger Pandora's box. Listen, there are IDPs who are still in camps right now. Just less than a week ago, the Deputy President was in camps here in Maimahio and elsewhere in Joro, giving some relief to IDPs still in camps today. There are integrated IDPs who we have not even begun to look at how to make restitution for their suffering. Remember, Mutegi, there are IDPs from 1997 and from 1992. So there are people, many Kenyans, with deep wounds, which wounds we should be looking for methods to heal, not for methods to reopen those wounds, kusudi kwamba ionekane tumeongea zaidi. I mean, we should be creating solutions. And I tell you, really, there are different kinds of political leaders. Many leaders, we should all be called, instead of bringing solutions to the table, they are simply looking for positioning, to be seen, to be closer to the powerful, or to be seen to be the defender of the powerful, instead of bringing actual practical solutions. Like what? We need to complete the process of healing. We need to make sure that all the IDPs, those in camps, are resettled. The integrated IDPs, who you are not hearing about them in all these meetings, and there are thousands, tens and tens of thousands of citizens in Nakuru, in Laikipia, in Nyandarua, in Kajiado, in parts of Uasin Gishu, who did not go to camps. They went to live with communities, either relatives or friends, and we have not even begun to address their plight. Those are the sorts of things we should do in order to complete the process.
There is somebody from Baringo County called Jabi who says that you should address the question that PNU operators manufactured false witnesses. This matter is sensitive to URP members who wish to join JAP.
It is indeed. It is indeed sensitive. Yeah. But just let us be fair. Let us even still answer it. If individuals do certain things, it does not mean you load them onto an organization. If you get something wrong, we're not going to say citizen, because Mutegi has done something, the whole of citizen is responsible for it. It doesn't work that way. But why, when you have a confessor, why not just deal with a confessor who has confessed? Yes, and deal with it that way. And he's perfectly entitled to join whichever party he wants to join. That's what we are saying. Let there be choices. But you don't have to delegitimize other parties in order for you to join one which you want. Live and let live. Well, ishi maisha yako na uache mwenzako naye aishi yake. Yes.
It looks like the follow-up of the question is that, in fact, Jirongo, one of the former members of parliament, in the newspaper today saying the president knows how to solve Ruto's problem at the Hague. And it looks like if something happened to Ruto, there's no job.
No, that is being unfair to the president. The president is neither a judge, nor is that his job. There is a competent court sitting in The Hague. There are competent courts in Kenya. That's their mandate to deal with these sort of issues. The president has a different mandate. The one where I might perhaps urge the president is there is real need now for Kenyans to come together. And I think it's the responsibility of the president to bring us together, even for a national conference, where some of these very heavy matters can be dealt with in a very sober way and in a manner that we are all Kenyans, we live in Kenya. It is our responsibility to see that Kenya works, Kenya functions, and our children are safe, and they are able to go to school. This is the sort of business that we should be dealing with. Those ones where for courts and other institutions, let them be dealt with that one. And even if you really want to attract the president's attention, it's not to tell him to do what he cannot do.
But it looks like if there's something happened to Ruto, we're in trouble.
Well, I think that all these political players know that 2017 is going to come. And just like in the situation of sugar the other day, many politicians will seek an opportunistic angle to say, okay, kama mambo iko namna hii, how do I benefit? And I think that is what that statement is obviously trying to do. That, okay, we know that there is a challenging situation here. Who can we point fingers to? And to some extent, even those who are talking about fixers, that's also what they're trying to do, is to say, okay, bas, tukubali, we are now blaming Mutegi, in order that their own agenda and whatever should proceed. Look, the issue is to prove innocence, isn't it? The issue is to get the matter away from out of court. Now, even however hard you shout at George here or yourself or the president or some other person, unless effort and work is in that you know. So I think that the statement is meant like that. How will Kenya move forward? I think it is up to all Kenyan leaders. Kwa mfano, you notice that the economy right now is in a little bit of a hiccup. So the question is, what are the real proposals that people are putting on the table, for example, for the president to act on, so that we might get out of the little bit of economic, shall I call it recession, that we are seeing now. There are some real issues about you know, how well are we using resources so that we can generate enough income. I saw yesterday and even today on the newspapers and elsewhere, you know, people talking about debt. Have we borrowed too much? And is it producing? Is it moving the economy in the right forward? So all these things are real issues that leaders ought to be addressing themselves to and putting actionable proposals. Lakini ile ya kusema, okay, if this doesn't happen, then ni fulani who is to be blamed, I think you're defeating it.
If I may just add, you know, right now we have 2 retired presidents. Tanzania has, I think, almost 3, going to be 3. Yes, Tanzania is functioning very well. Kenya is doing quite well with retired presidents. So it's not really a useful thing to say if George Nyamweya is not around in the next few years or so, Kenya will not function, or that Kenya should go up in flames. That is really not being fair to Kenya itself or to anyone else. And anybody harboring those sort of ideas should really put them in the freezer, unlock the freezer. We should be able to know that we are all going through life. We'll pass on, and the country will continue. And so even we shouldn't trouble ourselves too much with things of the moment.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And with those words from Mr. Nyamweya, we now go to Mount Kenya University Choir. This is a choir or a band. Many of them are here.